Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com.
Hello and welcome to SciTech Culture. My name is Ben Warner and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern. How are we today, Steve? I mean, we've been off for 2 weeks and look at all the craziness that's happened. Missing toilet paper on shelves and Democratic primaries going upside down and inside out and just people going nuts in general, you know.
Absolutely. As you can see, I'm quarantined in my little cell here, so I'm safe from the virus for now anyway, so at least until I go to buy some toilet paper.
Yeah, that's right. Maybe we can just pump out episodes for the next 14 days or something. All right, so we alluded to the coronavirus there, but we'll jump we'll get to that in the second half of the episode, but we'll jump into the Democratic primary race. And the last time we spoke, you know, there was still 10,000 candidates, marking their time trying to get a piece, but it turns out we're down to 2 now. The moderate wing swinging behind Biden in a fairly big way, I would say, and unless there's a big surprise that occurs or something out of left field happens for Bernie, it looks like Biden's going to be taking that nomination out.
Well, it's quite incredible. In just a matter of days, we saw the field shrink, and now an almost certain winner in Biden for the nomination. And you would wonder with the next couple of conferences whether or not Bernie would go on much past that, particularly if Biden has huge wins.
It's interesting because there's that. They're both flawed candidates in big ways, obviously. I mean, they've got their strengths, but they've also got their weaknesses as well. And it seems to come down to this idea of who's best to beat Trump. So Biden is literally, I am the best person to beat Trump. And I guess the ancillary argument being that he can return us to the Obama sort of days of how things were with civility, yada, yada, yada. And Bernie, on the other hand, saying, yep, we're going to beat Trump by, going on with our revolution and whatnot. But I think the startling thing, from the results from the Super Tuesday contest, of course, was that that support that he claimed that he had, Bernie, simply wasn't there. Because they did a lot of, exit interviews with voters and whatnot that voted for Biden, and they're just saying, look, we just want Trump gone. We don't need a revolution right now. And that seems to be potentially where the core of where their voter base will be. And it's probably more likely that they could swing some moderate Republicans behind them with the same message, potentially. Whereas Bernie, as much as we want, progressive stuff coming through and some of his ideas coming through, it may be that his sort of crash through method of supposedly making everything happen at once is not as palatable or maybe even as realistic as what people might think.
I think it certainly isn't very realistic, and to be fair, I think we actually saw the same sort of trend for Bernie last time against Clinton. He was quite strong early on, but he really dropped away in the latter part of the campaign, and I think we'll see that again. Obviously, it's interesting with the noise now being reduced, on the Democrats' side. Biden does look like a clear winner and quite a reasonable leader. So I think that moderate path will be, quite strong.
It's interesting because, we were talking before about the popcorn, entertainment value of seeing Bernie and Trump go at it at a debate. But I actually think that entertainment value will be there with Biden and Trump too, because I can't wait to see it, actually, because it'll just be a lot more hilarious than what I think people are expecting.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Essentially, it's like, the schoolyard rules thing too, because I watched that clip last night of Biden, saying you'd take Trump out in the gym locker room or whatever it was that he said, and just seeing that kind of dynamic play out is hilarious. But at the same time, it's interesting that, like Mike Bloomberg, for instance, in this particular race, he didn't exactly get bang for his buck in terms of turning his money into votes. But maybe, who knows what his real motivations are, or whether I mean, from a financial standpoint, no billionaire likes to lose money, but he's not going to hurt from it. And maybe he thought he did what he needed to do. Who knows?
Oh, who knows? Look, it was quite clear, and we remarked on it 2 weeks ago, that from his opening debate, he didn't look like he actually even wanted to be there. you're right about the spending money. It won't hurt him, but geez, he could have spent it on coronavirus vaccine or something like that.
Well, the thing is, he still can, I guess.
I guess so. Anyway, but he's a big disappointment.
The only thing I was kind of rooting for Mayor Pete there for a while, only because it kind of felt like an odd choice, but the thing is, he spoke really well, and he could potentially, have another couple of cracks at it given his age. And I kind of had a soft spot for Amy as well, in that Amy Klobuchar as well. But I guess there can only be one winner, and maybe in a normal election cycle, if it wasn't a Trump type personality, maybe Biden wouldn't have done as well as what he did, and maybe one of these other guys might have been able to do it. But now we've got, a couple of really old white guys in contention, and Bernie was quoted in an interview saying, the other day that it's tough for the public to accept one old white guy, let alone two, if they happen to do a split ticket, for instance.
That's it. But I guess the thing that's in their favour is that they're up against another. Well, I was going to say old white guy, but actually he's an old orange guy. He looks pretty bright to me.
And the funny thing is, Trump's the spring chicken out of all of them. So we'll segue slowly into coronavirus now, and we can use this. The connection here is that there was Bill Maher did a joke recently. I think he was actually half serious when he said it. Is that seriously, if you like Bernie, don't shake his hand, because he's going out, and you got to wonder, like from not the the connection there, whether they'd get infected or whatever. But he was trying to make the point that you go out to that many people, and they're all kind of old, and and if they're not on top of their game and healthy, who knows what could happen.
Well, that's right, and that's unfortunately where coronavirus is concentrated.
Yeah, exactly. So in talking now, obviously coronavirus is a bit more serious. I think I just want to start with this idea that I think we were talking about before we got on about what's real, what's the level of hysteria that's going on, how much of it's justified, how much of the reporting is actually being done really well, how much of the various governments around the world, are they doing a good job with this, are they not doing a good job with this? And it just, the overall consensus, for me, if you try and meld all of that into a big ugly piece of soup or whatever and try and make sense of it, is that it just, you almost don't know what the hell's going on.
No, and look, I think it's important for us to emphasise that the only place that you probably should go if you really want to get the information is the World Health Organisation. At least it's pretty dry what they report, but that's it.
All right. I mean, in terms of the actual stats and stuff like that, I mean, for Australia, it's, we've got, 59 confirmed cases at the moment and 2 deaths. And but the thing is that just, I don't know if you've been following some of that coverage recently, just if we talk about the hysteria level for the moment, seeing supermarket shelves being emptied of all toilet paper and tissues. And it's just crazy how some people behave in these situations. And I'm sure it's not just us in this country where this sort of thing's been happening. And it just, to the point where, I got an email from the CEO of Woolworths saying that they're on top of it and they're going to be limiting, how many items per transaction, blah, 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 and all that sort of stuff. And it's all this ancillary stuff that is quite crazy, really.
Oh, well, this is crazy. I mean, the coronavirus is very serious in terms of what it means. It'll be probably another seasonal illness, which has a mortality rate that will be added to the current list that's already there. So it's serious in that regard, but it's nowhere near serious enough to invoke this sort of panic. And I wonder, what are the motivations of people who go and buy toilet paper, or even stock up on food? No one's going to starve. You're not going to be cut off. And honestly, who, at least in Australia, wouldn't want to stay home for 2 weeks and work from home? So if and when that happens, it's not going to be a crisis. It should be an enjoyable time, a bit like Christmas, where you spend time with your family.
I guess the other thing to put into context as well is who it actually affects the most. So essentially, the older you get, the the more susceptible you are to more severe symptoms, or if you take it all the way, obviously some people have died from it if they've been
that's right,
not that good from it. But it's interesting that so kids under 10, for instance, like they could have it and that you'd never know, potentially, all the way up to like if you get 70s or 80s people that in their 70s and 80s who it could be a lot more severe, and it just seems to be a whole range. But the other thing that was interesting is these sort of spikes that you see, like Italy the other day reporting that they had 50 deaths in one day, and it seems to be that type of headline that can tend to freak people out.
Well, that, and especially when it's amplified on social media. I mean, it's a very serious disease if you have a respiratory complaint, a chronic respiratory complaint. It's very serious, especially if you're older. But the reality is that it's out there now. It's around the world, and I would question how much we actually know about its spread, because you can only report it if you test for it. And so if there's no testing, it can be out there, and as you've just said, Ben, some people might not even notice that it's coronavirus symptoms. They might think they've got a cold, or they might show nothing at all. So I think there needs to be some balance in that, and there probably will be a time, I suspect, where they'll take some fairly unprecedented measures to try and stem the spread. But at the same time, it shouldn't be anything that concerns anyone.
Well, just on that, there's obviously been various criticisms of different governments around the world and the way they've been responding to it, and all that sort of thing. Almost like not head in the sand approach, but more like they haven't struck that balance of taking it seriously enough, or trying to say that it's or trying to keep a lid on it when they should have just been up front in the beginning. That sort of thing, which doesn't help the situation either.
Well, I think as we said last time when we spoke about this, this is unprecedented. So they're going through a process which they've sort of envisaged for probably a more serious, illness. But it's not nuanced, and governments have never had to deal with this anything quite like this globally.
Yeah.
The media takes the angle that it's as deadly as Ebola, and we should all be panicked, and what you end up with is a mess, people confused. There's been fake news about this virus on Facebook, and honestly, that's, to me, more serious than probably any meddling in a US election campaign.
Well, maybe yeah, exactly. Well, maybe we can finish on that point, this idea that we haven't had to deal with this type of thing in an age where so much disinformation is swimming around out there, and it's dangerous in a way, like you said, because it leads people down a thought process that is probably not valid.
It's not, and it's unreasonable, and it's downright dangerous. And I think it's time for our social media platforms to start thinking very carefully about their role in the content that they publish, even though they claim they don't.
And well, didn't we? I think we talked about it in terms of privacy, in terms of hacking information and stuff. But this is just as equally as important in terms of their responsibility, in terms of how to deal with this sort of stuff.
Absolutely. And the thing is that inadvertently the social media platforms are programmed to have maximum emotional impact on you. So it's not even that the platforms have created this deliberately, although they have through advertising. But that same effect for misinformation or advertising is equal. And so I think I would hate to see a truly serious disease situation or pandemic which resulted in disinformation that really risked public safety globally.
Absolutely. All right, on that note, we'll wrap it up there, and I'm sure it won't be the last time we'll be talking about over the next couple of months. But as well as the whole US presidential race, I think we'll have to buckle in and get the popcorn out and just watch it all unfold with glee.
I'm sure there will still be a twist or two in that.
Absolutely. All right, so don't forget our website, SciTechCulture.com. You can get all of our links and content there. You can subscribe to our YouTube, Vimeo channels, our RSS feeds, listen and watch us on any and all of your devices, TV screens and whatnot. And we are grateful for you visiting our website. We greatly appreciate it. All right, so that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.